Prime Minister Modi is all set to visit United States for the first time since President Trump took charge. The president will be in Washington on the 25th of June and will hold official talks with the Prime Minister on June 26th. This will be his fifth trip to the US in 3 years and his first in 2017. The engagement is being seen as an opportunity to strengthen bilateral ties and iron out issues like the visa norms. India's demand for a permanent seat on the UN Security Council might also come up. To discuss more, we're joined by Meera, Shankar, former ambassador to the United States. Ms. Shankar, appreciate you joining us here on the program. This is going to be a crucial meeting, the first between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump, coming on the back of, the comments that President Trump made as the U.S. pulled out of the Paris Accord. Do you believe that that's sort of watered down sentiment?
Well, I think it's a first meeting between, Prime Minister Modi and President Trump. So it will be, in the nature of their trying to establish a relationship with each other, taking stock overall of the India-US relationship, and then, discussing with each other how they would like this relationship to progress in future.
Right. On the crucial issue of H1B visas, the U.S. maintains that this is an immigration issue. India would obviously like to raise the concerns with President Trump. Do you believe that we are going to see any significant forward movement? Because the U.S. has always maintained that it takes India's concerns on board. Fortunately, there has been no legislative action so far on the H1B issue. Do you believe that this is something that could perhaps see a breakthrough?
I don't expect a breakthrough given the, sentiment within the U.S. and the, public kind of rhetoric on the issue. But as of now, not very much has happened either on the H-1B visa issue, except the guidelines which were issued that, it should not be used for low-paying jobs, and it will be used to ensure skilled workers, and the parameters for those will be laid out, and a mere computing degree will not be sufficient. Software programming cannot be considered a technical skill. But there is potential action in future because President Trump has asked the Department of State, Department of Justice, Homeland Security, Department of Labor and State Department to come up with policies which would ensure that, this aspect is that U.S. concerns regarding it being misused for low-skilled workers are taken care of. So you could expect something in future. So there it's important for us to flag our concerns and also make the point that actually services trade is a two-way affair. It's not just one way. The U.S. exports financial services, advertising services, chartered accountancy services, and all kinds of things to India. So, and if you look at the trade figures, they're not that huge. I think going by U.S. figures, it was something, I think, around $42 billion or so dollars. Two ways. And India had a very small trade in 2015, and India had a very small trade surplus of $6 billion in services, so broadly balanced.
Right. But just speaking of trade,
Americans
Shankar,
don't know.
Right. Just speaking of trade, President Trump, while he didn't name India, he did talk about what he saw were restrictive trade barriers, so to speak. I mean, he mentioned Harley and the kind of duties that were imposed on Harley, and we know that that has been a concern that the U.S. has raised with the Indian government. What do you expect will be the dialogue when it comes to trade?
Well, they have forums, which I don't think that they'll go into the nitty-gritty of trade issues. There's a lot to discuss, Afghanistan, China, so on. And they would probably look at Pakistan, they would look at Middle East, so Syria and so on. They would look at the positives and see how to take the bilateral relationship forward. The nitty-gritty of trade is generally left to the Trade Policy Forum headed by the U.S. Trade Representative and our Commerce Minister. And they deal with so they would probably direct the Trade Policy Forum to look into all these issues and come back and report to them or something like that.
You know, given President Trump's position and stance, especially what we've seen him say and do with respect to Qatar, for instance, do you believe that the U.S. Could perhaps take a much more proactive stance when it comes to India's concerns on Pakistan?
Well, yes, the recent, there's been a policy review, and General Mattis, the Defense Secretary, has basically said that, they're not looking at political negotiations with the Taliban, and they don't think, that the way forward is to seek settlement with groups which cannot win through the ballot box. So it's a shift in stance, a harder line on the Taliban than the previous administration. And the commander of NATO in Afghanistan, the commander of the U.S. forces in Afghanistan, General Nicholson, has sought additional forces. So if this is the stance, then perhaps there may be some additional deployments, maybe not very large, but there may be some additional deployments, and also perhaps a greater willingness to, strengthen the Afghan forces, including through airlift capability, which they are short of. So on Afghanistan, we are seeing the emerging contours of a harder policy stance and an unwillingness to give a deadline for withdrawing, which from India's point of view is good.